Hi everybody, Kurt with Two Brothers Hobby, and we're here with the Extra 300S from Hitec. Now this is part of their new Weekender series of aircraft. The goal with the Weekender series is to get you up and flying quickly, so a lot of the work's been done for you. This is a P2GO kit, so everything's included: brushless motor, ESC, servos, all that's installed. All you have to do is get a radio system, 4-channel radio system, and a battery and charger. We're going to be using our Optic 6 Sport 2.4 gig transmitter and an Optimus 6 receiver. So let's get started on the assembly. Once you pull everything out of the box, lay it out on the bench and inspect all the pieces. Make sure there's no damage, nothing missing or broken. Check all the nooks and crannies in the box too. They did a really good job of packaging it. Ours came undamaged and is in great shape, but they have like the little hardware bag is stuck down in the corner as well as a prop spinner. So make sure you get all the pieces out of the box before you set that aside. You're going to want to read through the manual completely just to get familiar with what you're going to do. The nice thing about this kit too, it seems, is we need 3 tools. A number 1 Phillips head screwdriver, a 1.5mm hex wrench, and then they show either a 13mm wrench or you can use an adjustable wrench to be able to put your prop nut on. So we're going to install the gear with the wheel pant sweeping forward to the plane. And run the 4 3x15mm screws in. Okay, step 2 is a horizontal stabilizer assembly. Make sure you have the control horn facing down. You're going to slide it into place. And then use the 4x40mm machine screw, run it down in, and tighten it. Install the vertical stabilizer. We're going to slide that down through the slots. Using the two 2.6x12mm screws, secure the vertical stabilizer in the first hole and then also here in the second hole. Locate the elevator linkage in your bag, insert it in the middle hole, and then slide it into your linkage, your Easy Link, and secure just enough to hold it at this time. We're going to go ahead and bind our radio system and center our servos first, and then we'll do final assembly. Okay, now we install our rudder. These 2 hinge points, halves of the hinge here, go into these 2 halves. So you're going to want to line it up. And then holding your vertical stabilizer, press in firmly. And you should hear a solid snap, and grab your fuselage and push the lower half in. There we go. And make sure your rudder moves freely too. You always want to do a check after you've installed it. Make sure there's no binding and it moves back and forth easy. We're going to do the same thing to install the rudder linkage. Insert the Z-bend rod through the middle hole on the control horn into the Easy Link on your servo. And again, just take it down enough to hold it in place and we'll center and tighten them later. Now we're going to connect the tail wheel linkage. You're going to locate these 2 springs that are in your parts bag. You're also going to want to use some medium thread locker like this blue thread locker from BSI. What we're going to do is apply a little bit of thread locker to the screw. It'll take a whole lot. And we're going to start the thread on our tail wheel linkage. We have to move the rudder out of the way. There we go. And now we're going to take the spring, locate the small plastic pockets here on the rudder, run the spring in. There we go. And then we're going to insert that into the linkage. Now just leave it in place, repeat it on the other side, then you're going to straighten it up and tighten down your screws. Okay, now that you have both of your screws in, you're going to want to straighten your tail wheel. Straighten your rudder visually. Get them lined up. And then tighten down the screws. Now it's time to assemble the main wings. Pull off your access hatch. It'll be assembled from the factory. The front lifts up. You pull it out. You're going to see 2 locations here for the wing bolts. There's one, and there's one on the other side. You're also going to need your carbon fiber spar. And then make note of the fact that there is a access hatch right there for you to pass your servo lead wires through as you insert your wings. So let's go ahead and do that. Slide your carbon fiber spar into the first wing until it stops, and then pass it through the fuselage, capturing your servo wire as it comes up through the access hole. And then insert the wing into the fuselage. And repeat it on the other side. Now use your two 4x75mm screws to secure the wings in place. If you use a different battery connector than what comes on the Extra 300S, just remove the magnetic cowl, unscrew the 4 screws holding the brushless motor in place. This will allow you to pull the ESC out, feed the wires down through, along with the battery connector. This makes it a lot easier to solder on your preferred type of connector on the ESC. Now that we soldered on the connector that we want to use, we also took advantage of the fact that we were resoldering the connector anyway and hooked up our SPC port feed. Since we're using an Optima 6 receiver, it does support the SPC port, which allows us to monitor main flight pack voltage on the transmitter through our telemetry systems while we're flying, which makes it kind of convenient. You can always know where your battery level is before it goes to cutoff. So just feed the wires back up through the fuselage and reinstall the motor. And now we're ready to move on to the prop and spinner. Now, pay attention to the fact that you can remove the cowl, so you can access your motor if you've got to do repairs, if you have a crash, you can put everything back together. We're going to leave it in place for the prop assembly. You're going to take apart your spinner bag because we need the back plate that's on the spinner in order to mount the prop. Grasp the actual collet adapter tightly and then remove the screw on the front of the spinner to pull the assembly apart. Remove the nut and the washer and slide your collet adapter onto the motor, and then take your prop with the hex side facing inward. Make sure it lines up on your back plate. Put your washer on and then tighten up your nut. Make sure you tighten the nut firmly against the prop. You don't want it slipping off in flight. Now you can put your spinner back on. Again, recommended that you put a little bit of blue thread locker or medium thread locker on the screw to hold the spinner in place. Once your spinner's installed, make sure you press down the edges to ensure that it's snapped in the spinner back plate properly, and that you have smooth rotation. Now we're at the point where we need to bind our transmitter to our receiver. If you've got a new setup on the Optic 6, it's pretty straightforward. All I do is Optima 6 is I hold down the link button and turn power on to the receiver, and the LED will flash indicating that it's ready to bind with the transmitter. And then on my Hitec Optic 6 Sport, all I do is hold down the link button, turn the power on, and red light is solid and the blue light is flashing, and this LED on the Optima 6 is solid, which indicates that everything's bound up. It's linked together. So I kill the power on my receiver, kill the power on my transmitter, turn on my transmitter, turn on my receiver. I now have control of my servo. Now we hook up our receiver to all our servos. And you'll see on the Optima 6 we have channels 1 through 6 listed down the side. And you'll also notice in the servo leads inside the Extra 300 they have numbers indicating which channel it can plug into. Now we're using a 6-channel. If you're only using a 4-channel receiver, you're going to need a Y adapter for your 2 aileron leads and Y those into channel 1. What we're going to do is use our 6-channel and run independently to each of the aileron servos. If you're taking advantage of your SPC port, remove that plug now and connect the lead that you tied into your main battery lead into the SPC port. This will allow you to monitor the main pack voltage while you're flying. And there's our installed radio system with just our main lead for our battery. This next step, we're going to be centering all of our control surfaces for our ailerons, elevator, and rudder. And it's highly recommended you remove the prop and spinner off of the motor while we're doing this, just in case you happen to bump the throttle while you're making adjustments so you don't injure yourself. With your receiver connections in place and your radio properly configured, you should have the following control responses. Turn your transmitter on, plug in your main flight battery. Again, prop is off so I can't get injured. As it initializes, you'll hear some initialization tones from the ESC. Those 3 beeps indicated that I have a 3S pack connected to it. So everything's bound. When it's all connected, you should have response in this direction with your servo set properly. If we take the rudder to the left, it should move to the left. And this is all facing the rear of the aircraft. Right should move right. And then in the right stick, this is in mode 2, for which is common in the United States. Right stick down, elevator up. Right stick forward, elevator down. Right stick to the right, right aileron. Right stick to the left aileron. So verify that you're getting this movement, and now you know you have your servos set in the proper directions. The next step is to go through and adjust the linkage so our servos are centered and we get equal throw in both directions from our servos. With the radio system powered on and the tail of the aircraft elevated to take all the pressure off the rudder servo, we're going to move the servo horn so it's 90 degrees or perpendicular to the actual servo body. We want equal throw in both directions. We don't want to start off with the kind of servo horn offset. So all we do in our Optic 6 Sport is hit both of the edit buttons, and we move into the function we want, which is S trim, sub trim, move to the channel. Channel 4 is where our rudder is connected. And then what we're going to do is move the data button. Positive and negative, doesn't matter. Just start hitting it in one direction. If you go the wrong direction, it's no big deal. Just take it the other way. And we're going to take it until it's 90 degrees on the servo body. That looks pretty good right there. So it's actually plus 25% sub trim. This allows us to keep our actual trims for the rudder in place and not have to make adjustments in flight or run out of trim if we need to make adjustments in the air. Now we move on to backing off our set screw, applying some thread locker, and binding or tightening down on their control linkage. Centering the rudder on the Extra 300 is extremely easy. All you do is line the rudder with the vertical stabilizer visually at the top and then set your linkage in place. Apply a little bit of thread locker to the set screw. Doesn't take much. And tighten the set screw into the linkage. Making sure to keep your rudder in line with your vertical stabilizer. Now that we have symmetrical control to our rudder in both directions, we're going to move on to our elevator and repeat this procedure. Since our linkage in the wing is set from the factory on the aileron servos, you can still make sub-trim adjustments once you have everything connected and ready to go. You'll notice our left aileron is down a little bit from the actual trailing edge of the wing. So we can make the same exact adjustments going to the sub-trim. Find the direction it needs to go, and we'll match it up. And now it stops exactly level with the wing trailing edge. In your Extra 300 kit, you're going to find a couple of pieces of hook and loop material, self-adhesive. All you do is peel the backing off of it and apply one side to the inside of your fuselage where your battery is going to go, and the other to your battery itself. So it'll actually stay in place during flight. You don't want to put this in right away. You want to actually dry fit it. You'll notice that there's a pretty wide range. We can start off as far back as here, or actually tuck it all the way up inside the nose for balance. So we need to achieve CG. So let's get the CG figured out first. Now the last thing to do for a successful flight is to establish your center of gravity. Now on the Extra 300S is 76 to 86 millimeter from the wing leading edge. So I'm going to measure back mark 76 millimeter and mark 86 millimeter. Now a method we've used for years is we take a small piece of self-adhesive hobby film. This is meant for doing patchwork and things like that, or accents. And we cut tiny strips and then apply them to the wing right at the fore and aft CG mark. So when we're out in the field, we've got something tactile to feel. When we put our plane inverted, we can feel on the wing top, on the top of the wings, where those CG marks are. So if we use a different battery, or we want to reset battery placement, or again different sizes, which is pretty common, this will run on 3S and 4S combinations. So you may want to try both when you're out at the field. we know we can make adjustments in the field and still establish our center of gravity. So when you have it properly balanced, we're using a CG machine here from Great Plains. You can do it with just your fingers, that's fine, but this is an easy way to show the example of how it should balance out. We've got this balanced at about 80 millimeter right now. So if I take the plane to level and then I release, you'll notice it'll hold tight, it'll gently start rolling forward, which means I'm slightly nose heavy, which is good. That's perfect for flights. It's going to be a little more stable flights. You don't want it to slam right to pitch very quickly and exhibit real nose heavy tendencies. You want it to pretty much be real calm, and you notice if I just take it off axis, it isn't doing anything too crazy and too fast at the 80 millimeter mark. So I know I've got myself right at 80 millimeter when I hold level and I release. It wants to consistently tip the nose down very slowly and very gently, which means I'm just, again, very slightly nose heavy, which is great for first flights. You can always adjust the CG. Too tail heavy is a crash. It'll climb like crazy and you won't be able to pull the nose down. Too nose heavy, and when you take off, you'll have a hard time getting off the ground, and then it's really going to want to come in fast and hard. But if you're going to err to the safe side, err to the slightly nose heavy side, and you'll still be able to fly the aircraft and it'll be stable and controllable. But that's the CG, last step and most critical to make sure that your Extra 300S is going to fly successfully. Well, our Extra is finished, so we're going to take it to the flying field and do some flight testing. If you'd like more information about the Weekender line by Hitec or their radio systems, you can go to the Hitec website at hitecrcd.com. I'm Kurt with Two Brothers Hobby. Good luck with your Extra, and thanks for watching.